All right, women's basketball fans, Leonie Fiebich was definitely the toast of the town in New York City. But what does this mean for her in season number 2? All that and more we'll talk about on today's episode of Gotta Get Up. Gotta get up. Gotta get up. Gotta get up. Hey, women's basketball fans, welcome to Gotta Get Up, a podcast for New York Liberty fans brought to you by Black Rosie Media and hosted by Erica L. Ayala. All right. Welcome to another episode of Gotta Get Up, a podcast for New York Liberty fans. I am once again joined by the amazing Brian Florentin. B-Man, how you feeling?
I'm doing pretty good. It was actually funny. I was listening into my microphone. I'm like, where the heck is the sound at? And I'm like, it's right on time. So let me put my headphones in. I'm ready to roll.
You made it. Aloysius, good evening. We are so excited to be here. Another episode of Gotta Get Up. And we are talking about the one and only Leonie Fiebich. Now, Brian, you know I keep it real, which also means when, I kind of mess up, I say it. When we were talking about the New York Liberty trying to run it back, getting to another WNBA finals, I was like, baby, listen, that starting five was dope. I don't know how I feel. Like, what are we doing? What is the plan? What is the vibe? And Brian and Jonathan Kolb and some of the work that we'll talk about, some of the writing that Miles has done, Jackie Powell, we're just talking about length and how long this New York Liberty squad was going to be. Rebecca Gardner was a part of that conversation. And of course, so was Leonie Fiebich. So let's take it back for folks who were like me. And I was like, listen, I see the things on paper, but I need to see the eye test. Like, we just didn't know. Best move. Exactly. And we're going to get into that because I have some spicy thoughts about the 2020 draft in retrospect, right? Hey, Ronnie, what's good? Okay, I see a little thumbnail change. I like it. Very on brand. We like it. Okay, Brian. So let's start with top of the season, Leonie Fiebich to the New York Liberty. What did we know about Leonie Fiebich and Leo as we now know her coming into this most recent WNBA season?
Coming into the season, it was a little bit complicated because she was finishing up overseas work. So she wasn't there for media day and she got into camp late. So a lot of the early sort of like reporting from the folks who were there, we were just focusing on the people who were there, and right. Leo wasn't. And especially around the time of like the initial cuts, it's like, oh my God, why are we cutting this player? Why are we cutting this player? What is this? So when Leo came in late, it was very much a sense of unknown for a lot of Liberty fans, which I think is understandable because if you're not keeping up with like EuroLeague and all the Spanish leagues, things like that, it's going to be really hard to sort of like take in to see what she's working with. So it took a good bit of time. And I think during the season as well, like that initial stretch in May, she didn't play much. Like she wasn't really part of Sandy's early rotation. And I remember like later on in June, I was talking to Sandy about it. She was like, when I was young, I made mistakes all the time. And I told her all the time, just like, forget the mistakes, just play. So it took Leo time to get acclimated. And I think also it took a little bit of time for the coaching to be like, okay, we see what you can do. You went from like 7 minutes or so in May to like 15 minutes. And then you see the gradual increase in responsibilities and understanding that, we have a really nice little, we have like a great, it's almost like when you get a great pen, you want to use it all the time. Like this is a really cool pen. I'm going to write all kind of sentences with this pen. And that's what Leo was as we got deeper and deeper into the year.
Yeah, absolutely. You definitely saw that progression. And it's something that we've seen with Sandy Brondello teams before. We talked about it a lot in the 2023 season, Brian. And of course, with Leo, she being one of the players that we talk about that with. Now, another thing to know is that she, alongside the Sabali sisters, kind of, Chicago got fleeced. Listen, we're going to talk about that. She has been a part of the German national team. Of course, we know that she was at the Olympics for Germany's first appearance. We'll talk about that a little bit later on the show. But as you mentioned, maybe if you're not up to speed with EuroLeague. I certainly am not as tapped in. Around this time is hockey season for me, but also NCAA. But Euro, not just Euro League champion, has been an MVP before. And something that I find interesting, particularly Brian, and again, we'll talk about the Olympics a little bit later, and we have some audio that we'll play from Leo from Paris, and then also after the New York Liberty win the championship. But for the German national team, she's actually listed as a shooting guard. And both Brianna Stewart and Sabrina Ionescu, in a fantastic article that I'm going to drop the link in right now, by our friend of the pod. I don't think actually Miles has ever been on the pod, but he's definitely a friend of the pod.
Yes.
Miles Ehrlich, with a great interview. And both Stewie and Sab, especially Sab, saying that Leo's secret power is her shooting. So she's listed as a shooting guard, Brian. Now that is something interesting to look at, because my sense is that she wasn't used exclusively as a shooting guard for the New York Liberty, especially once she started getting more minutes.
Yeah, for New York, she slotted up towards the 3 because a lot of her run came during the time when B would be out, or it really when Sloot was out due to her family issue and family
Yep.
emergency.
Right.
So it would be a situation where Sab would slide to the 1, B would sort of like toggle at the 2, and then Leia would be in the 3 in the front court with JJ and Stewie. So we really saw her utilized in that way. Something interesting, our friend Lucas, I remember I think it was like June, he pointed out to me, he was like, in practice, they're running plays for Leo that they'd run for Sabrina. I was like, it's a good little thing I didn't really keep eye of. So that in the games, he'd be like, oh, you're getting Leo off these screens. She's cutting through this way. It's stuff that would look similar to shots they generate for Sabrina. They're doing it with Leo. And it's, oh, wow, this player who's 6'4", doing that and can knock down threes in that way. It really opens up a lot of good things. So it was really interesting to sort of see them tap into various buttons for her. And just sort of jumping ahead a little bit to the finals, there'd be situations where Minnesota would put court on her and Leia would just get that ball right in the post and go to work. And that's what, hey, when you have that skill, we didn't see it much during the season, but she had it in her arsenal, so Sandy could go to it right then and there.
And that to me is what's so fascinating about Leonie Fiebich. I don't know that we've ever heard Jonathan Kolb, general manager of the New York Liberty, express this explicitly, but there seems to be a fascination with this New York Liberty squad, literally from Brianna Stewart through the entire roster, to have not all players, but as many Swiss Army knife type players. Like, there's that saying, and I wish I had thought about this earlier because I would have pulled up the full quote, but there's that saying, Brian, jack of all trades, the master of none, but a master of many is better than a master of one, or something like that is how the actual full quote goes. But that seems to me like Leonie Fiebich, because to your point, Leo's strength, and listen, as I was preparing for this episode, if you go look at her FIBA, profile where she's got the full arm flex, I was
Leo's
like,
jacked.
Where the muscles come from? Like, what? She's tall, she's jacked. Like you said, she's strong. There's one picture, it's a image and then also a photo that I'm obsessed with, where you just see Leo grab a rebound, and I don't remember who the Liberty were playing, but she gets into this deep squat and is just like hanging on to the ball. Like, Leo is fierce, like low-key fierce. I also think it's funny that with Hoberta, sometimes she'll say Leo. Of course, her name is Leonie Fiebich, so we have we say Leo when we shorthand her name. But I think Leo also works because she's got a pretty massive roar. Like, Leonie Fiebich is not to be trifled with. Like, she's not gonna get got very often on the court.
One of my underrated funniest moments this season for the Liberty was when I think they were playing Vegas, it was definitely in Las Vegas. It might have been the first or second game. There was one instance where Plum is just trying to run Leo over. Like, you see her coming through, it's like, doesn't go. Then she just like, the second time, still didn't work. And nope. Leo's just like there. Like, she's like, when you talk to Leo, I think to Erica, she's unintentionally hilarious. Like, she won't
so funny.
Like she'll just like talk about stuff and it's so matter of fact. And I'm like, wait a minute, you
Very
can't say
German.
like you can't say that about the opposing team. No,
She's
what do you
very
mean? What do you
German.
mean their guards don't like to pass? Their bigs don't like to pass. I mean,
She's
you're
so
right,
funny.
but
But who
hey.
says that? There's the photo. Look at that.
Mm,
Yo, bong bong. I saw that picture today and I was like, okay, I gotta get in the gym. I got some work to do.
I went yesterday. I'm like, hey, let me like. I was like, I need to get my gains up. This is the year I got to okay. So I go back to schoolwork a little bit later this month. So I got to carve out like, is it 2 nights a week? Is it 3 nights a week? What do I do to
Figure
get
it
like
out.
that?
That's what I'm saying. We need her to drop the routine. As a matter of fact, next time we get Leo on the pod, or which would also coincide with the first time we get her officially on the pod, we're gonna have to ask for the routine because,
She
like,
still owes you a question from the finals too. I didn't forget.
oh, okay, thank you. Receipts. We're gonna play a little bit from there, but yeah, Leo is a beast. I mean, 6'4", a 2000 baby, which is hilarious also because
We're old. Oh
I
my god.
know. Well, you know what's funny? This is a complete aside, but I'm going to say it because I thought about it when we were getting ready for the show in the show notes. And I was watching some movie and I was like, oh, 2000. I was like, oh, that wasn't that long ago. And then I was like, baby, baby, baby. Like a person, aka Leo, born in 2000 is old enough to rent their own rental car, like
Yeah.
with their own ID.
What do
Like,
you mean you've never heard of Walkmans? What?
what do you mean? What do you mean? I was like, oh yeah, 2000 was a minute ago. Okay, anyway, let's get back to Leo. Aloysius, I see your question and I'm going to hold that because the we're going to hold it for later because I think it's going to fit a little bit later in the show. So um I don't want to get into that now, but to the point that I believe you're making, this is the thing. So we have Rebecca Gardner. We've talked about it a little bit. Um Rebecca Gardner, you know, kind of like older rookie, right? Same thing with Leonie Fiebich. And that is because, let's break this down, Brian. So she was drafted in the 2020 draft. Now, New York Liberty fans, y'all probably know that draft very well. Brought us
Mhm.
the one and only Sabrina Ionesco. You know, a Y2K baby. That's right. I mean, you know, the world was trying to figure out if we were still going to have computer love at all, any kind of computer love, real, imaginary, any of that, or literally just computers. And there's Leonie Fiebich, A Star is Born. But we're already off the rails. I love this for us. And that's all on me. um so she was drafted by the Sparks, then makes her way to Chicago by way of Chicago offloading Gabby Williams.
Mm.
And what I find so interesting is, again, this comes from Miles reporting. He did a great job here. But this is what Jonathan Kolb told Winsider, specifically Miles, regarding Leo, who went 22nd. Love that number. 22nd overall. It's also LOL because everyone says she's like not the mini me because she's taller, but she's the younger version of Courtney Vandersloot. But anyway, there was a relationship between Dustin Gray, former assistant coach under Walt Hopkins, and Fiebich, and it gave us insight into her. Also worth noting that at the time, Walt Hopkins was also working with the German national team. So that gave the Liberty insight into Leonie Fiebich, not only as a player, but as a person. We were hoping to draft her in that draft class, but at the time, LA got ahead of us and took her. So she was a player we continued to monitor. Okay, I want to stop here
Mhm.
because if you read the article, Miles goes on to say that the LA Sparks took Leo just before their final draft pick in 2020. Now, baby, see, this is how history be messing people up sometimes, or time it in and of itself. I'm gonna read you the list of players other than Sabrina Ionescu, because we already like we not finna do that. Other than Sabrina Ionescu, that the New York Liberty specifically, because this is Got to Get Up, a podcast for New York Liberty fans. And I just want y'all in the chat. I'm not gonna say nothing. I'm gonna give it to Brian and give it to y'all in the chat. But here are the players that the New York Liberty took um before even getting to their final pick, where in theory, according to this quote by Jonathan Kolb, they would have considered taking Leonie Fiebich. So again, Sabrina Ionescu, we know, number 1 pick. Megan Walker at 9, Jasmine Jones at 12, Kylie Shook at 13, another kind of Leo, right? Odom at 15. Brian, thoughts?
Well, Jazz. I remember Jazz Jones. I like one of my favorite Liberty moments for Jasmine Jones is like in 2021 when she was barking at Skylar Smith. Skylar's like the Liberty beat Phoenix in Phoenix, and then Skylar got annoyed. Why gotta post any other players? And then Jazz was like, "But we beat y'all," which outstanding. 10 out of 10 would recommend.
That was a time. A time was had.
Yeah, like that entire, I think just in thinking about the Liberty in 2020, it was very much we are deeply under construction. Like I kind of see what we're trying to do by getting it. Like, hey, I want to space the floor.
Don't forget that was still hybrid rebuild territory.
And it's very much let's try to grab as many lottery tickets as we can. Like we know the one and we know what she can do. We only saw 3 games of it because injury, but still. And then from there is very much well, no one can come in and out because we're stuck in Bradenton, Florida. So you guys just if you ever thought about if your dream was to shoot 3-pointers, now is your chance. Like just get out there, toss that thing up. Let's figure it out.
For real. He was like 5 out all day.
Yeah. And with that, like Jazz was like I think Lana was here for a little bit in 21. Jazz was there for a good portion of 21. So it was very much we're under construction. And then you had, I think Joss was a rookie in 2020 and 20. I think Jocelyn was there in 2020 because she was hurt in 21. Mm-hmm. So you started to see what they were trying to do and what the thinking was. But when you're deep in the hybrid rebuild at that point, there's really a situation where you can't really get much in. And I think combined with COVID being, the draft was like sometime in like May or June, if I remember correctly. Because I don't think it was in April straight. I think it might have been late April. So it took a little bit of time. And then we saw during 2020, a lot of the international players didn't just come back because it's like, we don't want to be stuck. We don't know what the water's going to look like as far as like being able to move around. So it was very much you have a set amount of people here and you can't really run a camp and things the way you want to. So it's very limiting in that regard. And I think also it's a situation for the Liberty grabbing Leo many years after the fact. It pays to pay attention and it pays to really invest in what you're doing, especially overseas outside of the United States. In the newsletter, we have the money moves section, and that right there is money moves, because if you're trying to compete at the highest level, you have to make sure that you have a footprint here in the United States and a footprint abroad. Like you have to invest in what you're doing. You have to invest in talent. You have to invest in scouting. You have to watch and pay attention closely. And you have to really build those relationships accordingly. Like one thing in the story, I think Leo said that the Sparks and the Sky didn't even call her.
Didn't even call her. Yeah. And we're going to get to that. We're going to get to that. I think, Brian, you were very diplomatic. I appreciate that. But here we go. This Aloysius, you be like, do you get the show notes on the low? Like, tell us for real. Like you hack the system. It's not hard. It's a Google Drive. But anyway, this is exactly it. What stood out to me as I was looking at this is that all those picks that went ahead of Leo did not have staying power. They came into the league in their draft year, but did not have staying power. Also, hi, Hobart, we mentioned you earlier, but know you're driving, safe travels. And I love this. Y'all couldn't miss the Leo episode. She played against Gabby Williams in EuroLeague today. See, love this. We already mentioned Gabby because Gabby and Leo actually tangentially through the trade wire are related or connected. But None of the players that the New York Liberty took ahead of Leo are still in the WNBA, let alone with the New York Liberty.
Mhm.
Now, hindsight being what it is, do we know what Leo would have been in the WNBA had she come over in 2020? No, we don't. We can't say with any certainty. And if I'm not mistaken, did Niara came in 21?
22.
22. Okay.
Yeah, draft 22, debut 23.
Okay, 20. Okay, I couldn't remember. Okay. So, we're going to have to see first of all, again with all these expansion drafts forthcoming, if the New York Liberty opt to keep Leo and Niara. I say heck to the yes, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. But again, first things first, it's just if Leo can have even one more season, she really doesn't need it, but if she can have just one more season of what she did in her rookie year, what we're calling her rookie year, then she is head and shoulders above any of the other players in her draft class, with the exception of Sabrina Ionescu. But you know what Leo also did at the same time as Sabrina? Get her first WNBA title.
Correct. Did that. Like come in, win your championship, head back home, and then come back and do it again.
Listen, did that. See, now I'm not trying to get, because I honestly don't think it's worth comparing Leo to Sab on a multitude of levels. You could even throw the 1 in 19 out there. I don't care. You're not going to hear me talk bad about Sabrina Ionescu, because lest we forget, as Brian mentioned earlier, when Courtney Vandersloot was away to be with family, Sabrina Ionescu was anchoring this team in a big way. Now, Stewie was doing it, as we've talked about, defensively, but we've talked about it also. Her three-point shot wasn't there. And again, the Swiss Army knife approach of the New York Liberty, if one of your star players isn't hitting from the perimeter, that kind of changes things. So, Leo, German national team, drafted 22nd overall by LA, as you mentioned. And here's the quote: Leo had her rights traded from LA to Chicago. Again, Gabby Williams a part of that when she was trying to get out of Chicago. This is what Leo said: "It sounds a bit weird, but the WNBA was never a priority for me because there were no touch points with them. Like, I was drafted, but what does that even mean?" And I thought that was such a poignant quote to get, because in so many ways it mirrors, and I'm glad that Roberta is here, but a lot of the conversations that we had with her German national team teammate Satou Sabali, of course, were about prioritization. And so Satou was talking about prioritization from a first round draft pick perspective. Now, Leo is what, third, fourth round, and no contact, no communication. And that's so wild, because I just want to take it outside of the WNBA and the New York Liberty, because some of you know I cover other women's sports, other sports overall. There have been so many conversations outside of the WNBA. I think maybe the NWSL, we can take them out of this equation. But in almost any other sport, in women, any other women's sports league, to this day, there's not a real clear understanding of what it means to be drafted, because a lot of these are considered emerging leagues. And if we're keeping it a buck, if you go past the second round in the WNBA, there's not really a clear pathway. I don't have the statistics, I don't have the numbers, but again, we see first round, not just first round, we see first overall draft picks. Dallas, get your life, get your life. Indiana, get your life. We see first round, like picks 1 through 4, flame out, gone. And some of that is because of the shortage, I would say, of roster spots. It's a tough league to make. Some of that is because not all teams, and this is something Gabby Williams has said, this is something Satou Sabali has alluded to, and again, that Leo is talking about very bluntly in her Leo way. Not all teams even though they may draft an international player, are prepared to incorporate an international player.
You know, as we were talking, I was thinking about it a little bit in the context. I remember in the newsletter we talked about when the Lloyd trade happened. Like we talked, I think like that week. This is a people business at the end of the day. Like you have to be able to relate to people, you have to connect to people, you have to understand where they're coming from, and you have to really make a space for them. And I think in Leo's story here, we see that these organizations didn't do anything. It's like, oh, you're drafted here, is anyone going to call me? Like, I'm here in Spanish League tearing things up. And okay, I guess I'm with you guys if I ever decide to come over. And there was no communication and no level of understanding and sort of like contact or even like, hey, just want to check in, see how you're doing. Oh, the 10th is your birthday? Happy birthday.
Right.
You didn't get any of that.
And this is Leo's experience. Let's take it to some of y'all's favorite, Hanju. The first year she was here, they didn't have a translator that could talk or was familiar with basketball at a high enough level to have her comfortably, Han that is, comfortably be able to even receive information from her teammates and coaching staff. So some of y'all, especially in media, may remember that Han had one translator her first year, and then it changed. And my understanding is at least part of that was to be able to connect a little bit better on the basketball side of things. And that's another thing that is not always clear. Now, I will say this broadly speaking, I'm not speaking about anyone, certainly not from the WNBA, but in, again, other leagues that I cover, there is anywhere from a player who is maybe coming into a market, the US market, where English is their second, third, fourth language, and they are not as comfortable speaking in a casual manner or even more buttoned up professional in an interview. So they opt either not to do interviews if they absolutely don't have to, or they do them with a translator or with someone from the organization. Yeah. Then you also have some players that just pretend or lean into the fact that people assume that they cannot speak English well, if at all. And then they're like, no, I mean, I'm going to call someone out. She is a GOAT, and I'm not picking on Brazil. But Marta, for years, would try to act like she didn't speak English. I'm like, Marta.
I saw you.
Like, I saw you in the club. Let me stop. No, I never did. I was an exaggeration. But like, baby, we know you speak some English. Come on, don't play me. Don't play. Just say you don't want to. Just say no comment. That's all.
I don't feel like talking to you today. Yeah. Go away.
Oh man. So I mean, Leo's story, I find that piece so fascinating because she becomes, for the New York Liberty, Brian, this diamond in the rough, mostly because of the lack of preparedness at multiple levels in the league. Now, this is definitely a hot take. The WNBA embraces and accepts xenophobia. That is a very bold statement. Go ahead. Brian.
For that, I'd be like, tell me more, because right. I can kind of, I would need more, just because I don't want to say that I disagree offhand, but I'd love to sort of suss that out a little bit more. Like, so I think in a moment like that, I want to be careful not to sort of like read intention into it or sort of like take an example of what I think may be what they're thinking about here. But I guess if we're saying that in the context of not creating a space for foreign-born players and not making an environment welcoming, that would fit the definition of it. But I don't, because I would say I need more, because I can like. I can get in the car and get on the road with you, but can I get to the destination you're going to? I'm not sure. But
I think xenophobia is a very strong word on the perhaps. And again, I'm with you. I don't feel prepared to say that I agree or disagree. I think we'd have to really break things down.
Yeah.
And I think, embraces and accepts maybe is more of the issue than the xenophobia. So
Yeah.
for those who are not familiar, xenophobia, a fear or hatred of people who are perceived as different, often on the base of race, ethnicity, nationality, religion, or other distinguishing characteristics. So,
Mhm.
that being said, when you put into context some of the reporting that Black Rosie Media has done regarding Satou Sabally, she has said that the WNBA and has called out Kathy Engelbert, they have to do better. She has said, I don't even feel now I wasn't prepared to have her full quote. We will hear from Satou later on the show, on the episode, as it relates to Leo. But basically, I'll paraphrase because I can't remember exactly what she said, but she felt that the NBA was doing a better job of being committed to international born players, comparative to the WNBA and prioritization. My take on what she had said is that it focused a lot on prioritization, but it wasn't only prioritization. And I can say, and I've had conversations. So I wrote an article for Sports Illustrated where I did a deep dive into Satou Sabally. I think you can read that article. Again, I'm not prepared to have it right now, but I wanted to hit on this because I think it's I can see a world in which the WNBA again, and I think we've kind of already said it on this podcast, whether it's in recruiting, the draft, communication, or even just the knowledge base, right, of players. I don't think that the WNBA does a good enough job
Mhm.
of um, tapping into a market that they're players that they keep up with very well. Brianna Stewart, Sue Bird, Diana Taurasi, Tina Charles, Neko. I mean, I could go on and on and on. These are all
Mhm.
players that have played abroad, overseas, right?
Mhm.
The WNBA didn't do a great job highlighting any of those international careers.
Mhm.
Players, excuse me, the league and teams in giving us overseas reports is what, 5 years old?
Yeah, like lives abroad is something that they're doing themselves, keeping up,
Right.
like, yeah, keeping up with that.
It's
Okay.
very new.
All right. I think I want to see if I can. I want to see if I can steer the wheel for a little bit. So I guess I
Yeah.
would say in this context, the cultural competence isn't there because
Oh,
it's a
for
situation.
sure.
Yeah, it's a situation where, like you mentioned, we don't keep up with the players when they're overseas. Really making sure that even though they're not stateside, you still have that presence with them. If they're in Turkey, if they're in
Right.
Spain, if they're in France.
The the blending, I mean, that I think we can agree on, right?
Yeah, and I think
Mhm.
I wanna
More to
see,
come.
yeah, I wanna see if I can take it a different direction. I wonder
Yeah.
if you're with me as well too. I guess within that comes a coverage piece because, for a lot of players who aren't born in the US, like if they're in the WNBA, the coverage may not necessarily follow them here. Like, I'll give a great example.
Mhm.
I think it was in camp this year. Stephanie Mawali came in for training camp. Stephanie
Mhm.
Mawali, Japanese national team, has been in training camp the past 2 years.
Mhm.
And there was one day in particular, a reporter came from Japan to talk to do a little story on Stephanie's journey here. And he was asking Sandy questions. And Sandy was like, "Oh, you're from Japan. Wow, thank you for coming." And she really just gave almost like an incredibly glowing endorsement of Stephanie, what she's doing in camp, the role she plays, the things like that. So I feel like it's a situation where a lot of things are coming together at once, like the league for many years, and this is beyond just like any structural things outside of them, but just in what they're doing. They didn't really do enough as far as like highlighting international born players, really letting their journeys be known and understood and heard. So it's the continuing, the sledgehammer being taken to sports media and media in general, so many things coming together as one. And I
Right.
think within that, also, I think for stateside people, I'll put myself in it as an example. It's a situation where, oh, okay, a player is from, it isn't getting the biggest spotlight, and you're there and you're watching what they're doing. Can you devote a little bit of time to talk about what they're doing? So I think it's a
Right.
situation where I'll use myself because I hate, like, I don't want to like speak for anyone else in the beat because they
Yeah.
have their own things, and I know what I do, so I can speak for me directly. So I can
Right.
be like, okay, so a player from
Jamaica, like last year, Morgan Green from Jamaica, for example, Sika Kone came in last year. It's okay. Can you do a little bit more to highlight what they're doing? Because everyone knows who the major players are. Like,
right.
And Brandon Stewart opened the league, for God's sake. She's good. Like she knows what to do. She has a Stewie Camlin. She's fine. So is it a situation where me in my role can I be like, okay, I know that the spotlight is there. Can I grab a flashlight and bring a little bit here? Yeah.
And I think it's that. And again, I think the embraces and accepts is where I'm having I can see where xenophobia is perhaps perpetuated. Is it intentionally perpetuated or not? I'll give an example.
Yeah.
Demiras Dantas. Now, pronouncing players' names is extremely important to me. I have a name where people mispronounce my name all of the time. I've gotten used to an Americanized version of my name, and I grew up in the United States. So hearing Erica doesn't bother me. But when I'm with my family, I hear Erika as an example. I don't hear Ayala. I hear Ayala. Or sometimes, well, depending on where in the world or where people think I'm from, sometimes it's Ayala, sometimes it's Ayala. So things like that. How players want to hear their name has been a critical issue with the WNBA. It's also been a critical issue with media members when they're like, I hate this. And it's not only the WNBA, because I'm having a real problem listening to some NHL broadcasts right now, but this whole idea of, well, last year their name was this, and then they decided to change it. Did they change it or did they correct you?
Yep.
Did they finally correct you? Because they got tired of hearing that thing the wrong way.
Yeah, because many of people has a story about someone butchering their name, and they're like, "Oh, to hell with it." Like,
Enrique.
Yep.
Neka.
Like, speaking of Enrique, in Barclays Center in particular, her name got butchered. I think it was like at 22, and she's like, "Hey, can you get my name right when you're announcing it at the game?" And then it got better, but still, it's like I don't want to have to get to a point where I have to go out of my way to be like, "Hey, can you just get it right?" So it's a situation where, and I think the league has gotten better at it. Like in each PR guide for the game, they'll have the sound. They'll have that's incredibly helpful.
And have the player say it, because I had a league do that, and they had a person say the name, and they were saying the first person's name wrong. And they were like, well, that's how the team said it. I was like, well, the team can say what they want. When I speak to them, this is how they say their name. So I'm gonna go with how the player says it. That's what we're gonna do. So Beta Basket just saying it's a lot of cultural unawareness, but also a willingness of embracing the different cultures, and maybe an unwillingness to embrace the different cultures. I can see that. Being surprised by an international player being so good. And I think, again, it's not that intent is the main tag for xenophobia.
Yeah.
And I will just say there's also ignorance. Xenophobia and ignorance are cousins. They're related, but they're not always the same. For example, I owned up to it. I know nothing about Leo. Was it because she was an international player that I thought she's not going to be any good? I don't think so. I will be honest. I never thought of it that way. I hope it never sounded that way. But I'm an eye test gal. And as a US person, I don't see Germany play. I don't watch Eurobasket. I don't watch Spanish league. So for me, I was just like, she could be, the next MJ for all I know. Yeah. And I haven't seen it, so I can't speak on it. Yeah. And I do think that there is a lack of, and I think this comes from again, this is a conversation we can have, and I do want to have it. We're going to move on after this. But I think also, Brian, it comes from this American exceptionalism that exists very, very pungently in sport.
Yeah.
And there's a part of national pride. And then there's this idea that because of the funding, generally speaking, not always for the women's side, but even the least funded women's USA team is likely better funded than the majority of women's teams that they're facing up against.
Yeah.
And so when you have media, and this goes to coverage of the WNBA or women's sports as a whole, they're going to take shortcuts. They're called heuristics, but we'll just say shortcuts. Mental shortcuts are heuristics, are known as heuristics, and they are very closely associated to stereotypes. But you take these shortcuts. Okay, have I ever seen Germany win an Olympic medal? In some people's minds, they take a shortcut and say, okay, well, how good can this team or any individual on this team be if they're not even competing for an Olympic medal? You know as well as I know. People say that about all kinds of things. Championship rings, all kinds of things. You know, is Caitlin Clark not the best player in college when she was playing just because she doesn't have a championship? You know as well as I do, Brian. Some people will say, absolutely, she is not the best player in her given time because she doesn't have a championship, as if there aren't multiple things. So I think there's some of that goes down too. Satou Sabally came in her draft class, literally drafted right after Sabrina Ionescu, and she had an interesting trajectory also because of injury. But if you even just look at those two, drafted very closely together in their draft class, going to hybrid rebuild teams, one more successful than the other, I guess. You know, struggling teams at the time, right? You know, if anything, Dallas might have been in a better spot than New York at the time. And then you bring in race, you bring in that Satou speaks, multiple languages. You bring in the fact that not only does she embrace fully her German descent, but her African descent. She lived in Africa for a time. So, you know, I do think it's a conversation worth having. And so you know, we definitely didn't have this on our list for today, but I love that we got into this. And I love, Roberto, that you brought this up, because cultural awareness or lack thereof is definitely something that happens. Sometimes I do feel, and I've experienced something where it comes from an intentional or a place that is not fully lacking ignorance. Like there's a consciousness that I'm making a choice to make this declaration on this player. And so that's where I can see the connection. But anyway, I do want to get to, speaking of the international game, baby, Black Rosie Media, we were in Paris. We can be, well, LA is not going to be international for us, but we trying to chug along Milano Cortina for the Winter Olympics coming up next year. But I want to take us back. We're going to use this journey, Leo's journey, because she said something, and Satou was, oh my gosh, so heartbroken at the Olympics. And I just think that at least some of what we saw, because WNBA.com is being very weird, so I can't show the splits right now for Leo's career, but I do think that, and it was LOL to whoever, I think it was maybe High Post Hoops, who was like, these are the teams that are going to have trouble after the Olympic break. And a lot of people put the New York Liberty up there because they only sent Sabrina Ionescu and Brianna Stewart, as if we didn't have a whole nother host of Olympians, including a coach.
Including the coach.
But okay, maybe that goes back to what Roberto is talking about, right? And what I called American exceptionalism, right? When we come under the U.S. gaze, G-A-Z-E, not G-A-Y-S, but hello, U.S. gaze as well. The U.S. G-A-Z-E, things get really clouded. But Leo, I don't think she had an exceptional Olympic tournament, and she played a critical role for Germany. And that experience for the German national players was really something that they took on. I said a lot, Damien, so I'm sorry. I don't know exactly what I said where you were asking if I was talking about Nyara Sabally and Satou Sabally. Probably yes. but I don't remember what I was saying. But I want to play a little clip here. We're gonna hear from Leo. I believe the first clip is Leo as well as Satou talking after their loss. So if we run through the Olympics for Germany, they had a great showing, a great outing against Belgium and Japan. They actually performed decently against the US for a time, and then a heartbreaking loss against France, which was a great game. But here's both of them again. I believe Leo is up first, and then we'll hear a little bit from Satou, or it might be the other way around. Well, we'll find out right now. Here's the clip. When you think of the full tournament for Germany, what stands out to you, Satou?
I mean, I'm proud, you know, how we beat Belgium.
Sorry, this is Leo. I thought it was Leo first. This is Leo. Here we go.
I think that was one of the biggest wins in our history. And then backing it up with Japan, an extremely hard team to beat as well. Yeah, but it shows that we're not ready to beat these big teams yet.
Do you hope that this will be a springboard for the team moving forward in international competition?
Yeah, of course. I mean, you can see that if we all get together, you know, the best players in Germany, that something big can happen, and I hope we can do that the next 4 years.
It was an honor to cover you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I mean, Brian, you can even hear it in Leo a little bit, which is why her voice cracked. So I was like, oh, that must be Satou. No, but it was Leo. They were very proud to be at that tournament, and the way that they played was more than we're just happy to be here. You know, this was a team, a young, scrappy team, and we'll hear from Satou a little bit as well, that really wanted to perform. But again, in her very Leo fashion, the first thing, and I think especially when she's coming off of a loss and a very high stakes loss, she's even more blunt.
Yep.
She said, we're not ready to take on these big teams.
Mm-hmm. Like, I'm like, you know, just bringing it briefly back to the States. Like, you know, we were there after game one. That was not a happy camper.
No.
She was like, Leo was great. And she was like, man, it's the same thing. We're just making the same dumb mistakes, essentially. Like, if you go back, I have video of her post game that night. I'll probably put it in the Slack channel for everyone to watch back. Her post game in game one. She was furious. And
she was out, to your point.
Yeah, I was asking her, I'm like, yo, what do you guys need to do? She's like, yo, we know what they're doing. We're just making the same mistakes over and over and over and over and over.
But
and
you know, yeah,
she's very open about it. And there was one point where someone was like, hey, you know, as a rookie, you know, your stats were this is great. She's like, man,
miss me with all of that.
Yeah, I don't want it.
That's what she would have said. Like if she was born in New York, she would have been like, miss me with that. Like we're not doing this. I said what I said. I'm not looking for no silver lining because I ain't got one. Like that's really how she came with it. And we'll talk about her performance in that game one because it was a standout for sure. Even early in the playoffs, she had a standout performance where, you know, but again, if we fast forward after game 5, because she had a critical shot in game 5 of the finals, and she was asked, you know, what gives you the confidence, or some kind of question us media folks would ask somebody, and she's like, that's what I do. I saw the open shot, I took the shot, I make the shot.
Yeah, it's very much
one make basket. Like I don't know.
It's like what do you mean I don't take a wide open 3-pointer? Like why am I like I'm on a basketball court and I can make that shot? What's the motivation here, you know?
Why would I not? Like she was like, what are y'all talking about? What do you mean? What do you mean? Why did I take the shot? I mean, I don't ask you why you asked the question. Like, what do you mean? Like,
Erica, can I admit something?
Go for it.
When I do questions, I operate essentially on like one premise and like one idea. I just don't want people to think I'm an idiot. Like, I'm like, hey, is this like, please, if my question sucks, just tell me. Like, just tell me. If you just, but hey, like, what you asked there is kind of, like,
the worst is when you know it's a bad question or it went south and you're trying to get it back.
Yep.
And you're just like, okay, I need to stop. I need to stop. And sometimes some of them, like Courtney Vandersloot is really, and she's a little sassy with it when she does it. Like sometimes she'll be like, she'll just interrupt someone who's asking their question for too long. And she's like, yeah, well, basically she's like, per my last email.
Yeah. Like Erica,
Whereas when someone's like, yes, I just said, and I'm like, oh no.
Erica, there's something specific to Sloot I'll tell you about where I saw it in real time. I'll tell you about it when we're done.
When we're okay, offline. We have our Sloot episode coming up, so we might circle back to it. Okay, I do want you to hear from Satou as well, because again, I really do think that, and this is something I would love to ask Leo and Niara when we get back for 2025, but this collective experience impacted Leo and Niara, and I think Satou as well. She just didn't have an opportunity to really play that out in the playoffs, but here's a little bit more from the Olympics.
I just told them like to remember this emotion, that, you know, pain and joy it really belongs to the sports, and we just have to remember this moment to be able to, you know, persevere in the next game and know that we don't want to feel like this ever again.
So that was Satou, and I asked her, she took a very long moment on the court with her teammates. And again, she talked a lot about how she didn't like her performance. She felt that she failed to live up to her potential in the biggest game in the German senior national team program history. She was very hard on herself. And I think that goes back to some of the questions, again, that we'll get to later in the episode. When you're someone like Satou, every team, right, Brian, every single team scouted Satou.
Mm-hmm.
Not that the scout ended there, but we know for sure that's where the scout started.
Mm-hmm.
And when you get to a knockout game, teams are going to, France in this case, is going to throw everything at the first bullet point on the scout and then dare everybody else to have an exceptional game. And that's exactly what happened to Germany. But again, I do think this collective experience was something that really impacted Leo. And I think there's a few things that were going on. The pain and the heartache from the Olympics, but also the New York Liberty. Because I do think, Brian, the conversations of having Leo start in the playoffs happened before game one against Atlanta.
Way before.
We know that, right? And Courtney Vandersloot has alluded to that. Of course, Leo would never tell us. She's very much what happened in the locker room stays in the locker room, and I respect that. But these are conversations and a strategy that the New York Liberty was deploying. So when you come off of that tough loss, and I do think Leo is a player who she's not going to be outwardly emotional, maybe ever, but certainly not with media. But she can internalize that in like the best, most positive way. That's how it feels like she plays. Like she's like, okay, bet you had something to say about me. Noted. And so I think in some ways that experience for Germany and then having Niara and Leo come to New York for a team, as we're going to hear from Leo in a minute, that talked a lot about with their sports psychologists, the ache, the hurt heart space, right? As Courtney Vandersloot said a lot, the hurt heart space, the collective hurt heart space was a driving factor for this team. And maybe that's the difference, Brian. Leo didn't know that intimately. She wasn't on the team last year, but then she experienced her own version of that. And it feels to me, if I'm going by eye test, and then I do think the numbers support this, that Olympic break was transformational in a very critical way for Leo and the role that she was then asked to play for the New York Liberty.
Yeah, I think, just to sort of like build on the lineup piece with Leo, like there were points, I think there were games where it would be one guard, wings, and then your bigs bringing it home. You saw it, and you saw it really play out in a lot of successful combinations. And then gradually, like there was the first game when I think it was when the Sun were undefeated and the Liberty went up to Uncasville the Saturday morning. Like Leo was in that. She was playing down the stretch. So she hit big shots in that game. And it was, I think that was the first time we got her in the post game scrum, because usually I think she got like one podium game after like the loss in Minnesota when they lost by like 30. But you know, if you want to talk, get up there. So that one didn't count.
Leo, take one for the team.
Yeah, but like we got her in the back afterwards, after the Connecticut game that they won.
And she was really walking us through, like her getting comfortable in the league, getting her teammates pouring into her, really giving her that support, dealing with the referees, which always a problem for her in particular, because the refs tend to give her a bad whistle. But you really sort of saw the comfort and her sort of like ease and getting into the game more and more gradually build up. And I think for the Liberty, you know, we talked about it last year. What was the big thing? Can you hide one of your two weak guards? And they couldn't last year. Like,
right,
they were able to beat just about everybody, but then when the final boss was waiting for you at the end, you couldn't do anything about it. And then that one weakness you had came through at the absolute worst possible time. Despite, you know, the effort that Sloot had. Like, she was their best player in game 4, so she brought it. But ultimately, it's when you're at the when it's at the margins like that. One little weakness in the armor is just enough.
The chink in the chain, right?
Yep, that's the one right there. And this year, you know, because I remember like when they beat the Aces the first time in June, I was like, okay, like I didn't say it out loud. I only told Lucas this, but I was like, if you see Lucas, he'll tell you. I was like, yo, we're
gonna fact check this story Brian's about to lay down. Okay,
yeah,
I told him Lucas back.
Yeah, I told them, I was like, yo, they're better than them this year. Like, they're better than them. They're gonna do it. Like, I told him, I was like, because I was like, this team is longer.
Well, you called it on the show early on.
Yeah.
You sure did.
I was like, yo, this team is so much longer, and that was later. Because like every game, every time I'm like, God damn, she good as hell, man. Look at this.
So like, oh my god.
Like we were both like fighting to avoid being complete Leo Fiebich stan accounts, but we wanted to. I was like, man, look, I'm 1 3-pointer away from just being a stan account.
And then she hit that thing. Well, first of all, she hit a bunch, but in game, if you are not a Leo fan after what she did in game 5, you just say you don't. Just say you're a hater.
Yeah,
just say you're a hater, because there's no way. There's no way. She did a little bit of everything in that game. And we have some more clips from Leo. She's going to reflect on the Olympics. She also, in this scrum, I don't think I have the full clip where she's talking about this, but she talked a lot about the physicality, and that mirrors some of what she told Miles for his story that I linked further up. But adjusting to the physicality has been a part of the growing pains for Leo in the WNBA. She's been very open about that. She was open about it after the championship win. And I think that, to me, and it's going to go into something we're going to talk about on the other side of these clips, that to me is her biggest, probably her biggest learning curve, Brian. So as we play these clips, and for everyone who's still with us, because we're going to get ready to get into some of our questions from y'all for our fourth quarter listener questions and comments. So the big question I have is, should Leo be a New York Liberty starter next year? Think about it. I want y'all to think about it. Now, we don't know the full roster, but we have a pretty good idea. I would imagine. Just think about that. You can start typing it in the chat if you want, but let's hear a little bit more from Leo. This will be after the New York Liberty win the WNBA championship. And she mocked me for my ultra bright light. I did not leave that in.
Honestly, I don't even realize what happened the last months. We were just in a go mode all the time. You know, Niara and me, we spent every day together for the last months, because we had the national team, and then we went here and just had big goals, right? We had big goals with the national team and big goals here, and it's just, we were just chasing this championship. So yeah, I'm just proud we got to achieve our goal. It was amazing. I've never played in an atmosphere like this. Normally when I'm playing, I don't really realize like how loud the people are and what's going on, but I had a moment where I was out on the bench, and I was just seeing all the towels go up and down, and you know, everybody like screaming like crazy, or they started like we all we need. It's just amazing to be part of this.
Now that it's over, how much time are you going to give yourself to just like relax and really take in this moment?
I'm going to take a break. I'm going to go on vacation after celebrating this here in New York with the fans. And then I have a national team coming up in November. So quick break, but it's going to be a good one.
Congrats, Leo. Thank you so much. We all we got, we all we need. That's right. There were multiple players that had talked about the crowd, not just after the win, but throughout the whole playoffs, the whole series. And for Leo to say that, I loved it. That was your question, though, Brian, regarding what will her offseason look like. And that leads into a bit of news that we got. So Leo says she's going on vacation. She's taking a break. But we do know what she's doing in the WNBA offseason, Brian. That just dropped. And Roberta actually shared that with us in Slack.
Yep, Leo is doing some overseas play, and I think today was her first game, if I'm not mistaken. She's been in Germany post-championship. She and Niara were doing the media rounds. They were on, Niara was telling us, they were on like the biggest sports show in Germany, and Niara, like me, not a soccer knower. So she's like, oh, I have to kick a ball into the net. What? But luckily her brother and Leo were like, you do this, and then it works out. So, and also just speaking, this just popped in my head. Leo was hosting a basketball camp in Germany too. I saw on her Instagram, and we were talking a lot about just the sort of like accessibility point, the communication, so like really expanding basketball in that regard. So a player like Leo, coming off a fantastic year that she had, she's pouring back into the next generation of basketball players after her. So you really see the sort of like care that she has for the profession and the work that she does. So it really comes together and shines in that way as well too.
That's right. Yeah. Leo playing with Valencia once again, as you mentioned, played her first game recently here, and, you know, much deserved break. So that's good. I think also I will always stand Rebecca Allen. I really wish things could have worked out, but I think she's actually on that same team.
Is she back playing Valencia this year?
Is she back? Or maybe, well, because, you know, she had that injury, I forgot. So maybe not this year, I forgot. But that's a team that Beck Allen has played on in the past. So anyway, you know, I love that Leo took some time away. I love that Germany embraced them, because that is another quote that she gave. She said it was a big deal when she was drafted, but then that kind of petered out because there was no other information for her until, of course, she comes to the New York Liberty and wins a championship. All right, we are going to start wrapping this up. So I'm going to get to some listener questions. And Aloysius, you had a question that I thought was interesting, and it feeds into this idea of, can Leo be, or should she be, a New York Liberty starter next season? Scrolling back, I think the only problem with Leo is time out for the picks. Those could be shortening a career. What do you think? Okay, so now if I'm reading this correctly, I think what Aloysius is talking about is some of those blind screens that Leo took. And I will say, if you look back on, maybe not all of them, but some of them, I know Rebecca Lobo was irate because she was like, how are her teammates not calling this out? And there were some times where I know Jonquil Jones very specifically appeared to be communicating with her. But I think also what is interesting about Leo is, and she alluded to this in that scrum that I just played a clip of, but she knew the hard screens were coming, and she decided, she's like, I'm not getting got. She's not no punk in these streets. So to take Leo out, it has to be a blind screen, because otherwise she's going to find a way to get through you. And that has become a little bit of an issue, both maybe just to see if she's even healthy. But, you know, I think she'll figure out that part of the game. I'm not too worried about it. I do think, though, with respect to the longevity of her career, now, statistically speaking, there's been science behind women kind of peaking at a different age in their pro athletic careers than men. So despite what ESPN might write about Stewie, I don't think Leo is anywhere near her prime.
Yeah.
But I do wonder, are we going to be able to, well, not we, because we're not doing the work. Will Leo be able to replicate, and can the New York Liberty put her in a position to, if not replicate, even expand upon what she was able to do for them, Brian, in their run to the championship?
I think what we really saw, and we tapped on it a little bit earlier, we really in the finals saw the full display of her game. Like there was one game, I think it was it might have been game 3 or 4, where she had this just amazing skip pass to the corner for a 3. And I was in the person, I'm like, how the heck did she get that pass over there? Yeah, and then we saw in the series when Minnesota will put Courtney Williams on her, Leo got that thing in the post and went right to work, and it looked good. Like, and they ran high low to get her the ball in the post to really take advantage of that. And I think for a player like her, I think especially now that we're getting into 44 games and potentially beyond in 25, 26 and going further, it's a situation where, okay, we're trying to manage Brianna Stewart's workload. Does that mean dial her down a few shots a game? It'll be fine. Like, and we spread those shots over to Leo. It'll work. Like, Leo can do these things. Like, she can score in the post. She's a great 3-point shooter. Like, she's a very heady player. She's a good cutter. She's good at coming off of screens. So there are opportunities, I think, for Sandy and the staff to really sort of explore and try things out. And I think what also helps is that the Liberty, if everything goes according to plan, they're going to have consistently excellent rosters across the rest of this decade at the very least. So you can be like, okay, I can experiment with this a little bit more. And then if it's not working, okay, Brianna Stewart, go do stuff. Like, you can do that. And
I know. Yeah, we can do that. And that is the value of Stewie. That's why, again, you heard us on Gotta Get Up, a podcast for New York Liberty fans, being concerned, thinking about the future of, if we're overusing Stewie now, what does that mean for her longevity down the road? And again, we saw it. The thing, though, that, and again, this goes back to, is Leo a shooting guard? Is she that small forward for the New York Liberty? Is she a little bit of a hybrid? Because what I hear you saying, Brian, and I think it's smart, is that she could be someone who we deploy to eat some minutes from Stewie. But I wonder if maybe her comp, at least for the New York Liberty, is, assuming that outside of Kayla Thornton, RIP, well, she's not, she's still alive, but she's not with the Liberty anymore. Gone too soon. But I think with New York, though, Brian, because I like this comment about a point guard, at least for now, Courtney Vandersloot, we're expecting, we're just going to assume Courtney Vandersloot is back. We've talked about this. We're going to talk about it on our next deep dive. I think we got to figure that out. I think the way she's been used for the New York Liberty, she's actually more of the safety valve, or giving a reprieve to either Sloot or even Banajalani Hamilton.
Yeah, I think especially we'll probably get to B down the line, but like, having Leo was huge, because when B was out due to the knee surgery, when her leg messed up again in August, it's okay. It's really hurtful that B is out, and we hope that she's back soon. But you have Leo who can step in and fill that gap in the meantime and explore new things out. And then the depth of the team came into play because you saw more of KT. We saw Kennedy Burke grab some minutes there. So the flexibility and the foundation of the roster is built so that way you don't have to over leverage players like B was in 2021 when she had to carry everything for this team.
Right.
So
exactly.
now that you have a great coaching staff with a great roster and really fantastic depth and talent across the board, you can manage the minutes a lot better and avoid putting too much on one player's shoulders. And I think for Leo, she can, and I think she can perfectly slide in between 2 and 3. And we saw plenty of moments when they ran the jumbo lineups out there. So it'd be Stewie, it'll be JJ, it'll be Nyara, it'll be like Kennedy, and then Leo on the court. And it's like, oh my God, these are like all the talls are out there. It's long and tall and super athletic. So you really got to see her fit into various roles and combinations throughout the year. And I think for Leo in particular, she's a player that doesn't need the ball in her hands all the time.
Definitely not.
Yeah, so you have a little bit of flexibility in that because you're not having a situation where, oh my God, my two guard hasn't gotten the shot in like 3 minutes. And if I don't get her the ball, it's going to be chaos. It's okay.
Yeah, she's
Like,
definitely not that. That's not the vibe.
yeah, because like Leo can like lock in on defense and hold it down on the perimeter.
Okay, so that's what I wanted to talk about, and then that's what I had in my mind to talk about when you're
Mhm.
talking about Benajelini Hamilton, and then after what you just said, I definitely want to talk about what she does offensively. But let's start on the defensive side. Leo's defense, underrated.
Mhm.
Underrated for the importance and the magnitude of the moment. Now, I think Niara, we could say the same thing. Her minutes, we talked about this on her deep dive episode. You know, she is the quintessential Niara, that is the quintessential get me the right play at the right time kind of player.
Mhm.
Like that's what you get from Niara.
Yeah.
I think Leo is that, and she has a little bit more, and she's been given more minutes, so she can do that more consistently.
Mhm.
I think that her defense and the length that she brings, right, has been critical on the defensive side for the New York Liberty. Now, going back to her offense, and maybe also talking about her defense, if we go back to the article from Miles, the thing that Stewie said is that if I had to give Leo a demerit, and this is wild to me, and I love it, is that she's maybe not as aggressive as she can be, is,
Mhm.
effectively what Stewie said. And I think that's right. Because when Leo gets into her beast mode, who's stopping that? Who's stopping that?
Yeah, I think what happens a lot of times when you have really great teammates around you is the natural. Oh, I don't want to step on anyone's toes. I don't want to like just throw things up because I'm open for this moment and I'm not spreading the wealth around. And I think for the Liberty, what helps is that you have players who are very encouraging. It's a situation where it's like if you open, put it up there. Don't worry about it. We trust that your shot is going to be good pretty much every time. So if you're wide open, get it. If you got an advantage, I'm out your way. Go to work. You got it. So
Yep.
I think for this team in particular, having that confidence in your teammates matters a great deal, and it always ensures that you never feel like you're down on yourself when things aren't going well.
Yep.
Like just to sort of like briefly detour to Sabrina as an example, it's okay. Her shot's not there. You open, throw it up.
Throw it up.
Like yeah, you
You already know how I feel about that.
yeah, don't hesitate. You out there, like it's a good shot. You wide open. Like if
Take
I
it.
need you to rein
Take
it
it.
in, I'll pull you and tell you, hey, I need you to rein it in. But
Right.
if it's within the flow of what we're doing, why not? Like go for it.
That's it. And again, I think that was a quote about Leo, but I think it's honestly a lot of the New York Liberty roster. I do think I would personally like to see every one of these players take just a little bit more command of the game at particular times. When you have a Brianna Stewart, when you have a Sabrina Ionescu, and I'd probably add JJ and Jonquel to that as well, it makes it so that not that these players are going to shy away from the moment, because we saw in game 5, as it was mentioned, I just put that comment up, but Leo got the ball rolling in OT. There was that game, what was it, game 2 maybe, where she got the ball and
Yep. So
pulled up for that 3-pointer.
Mhm.
And people, I think it was Sab and maybe someone else was asked, oh, what did you think of? She's like, I knew Leo was taking that shot. I knew she was taking it. And I love that. And that's what we need more of from Leo. We need more of that from Niara.
Mhm.
We started getting a lot more of that from Jonquel Jones. We talked about that in her deep dive episode. So I think the more that, and we talked about this with Sandy, the more that the starting 5 is solid, the opportunities trickle down. And I think that's what the beauty of the New York Liberty, and the times that are tough for them in the regular season, in the playoffs, is when there still seems to be, in the real crunch moments, a lack of I don't know, is it that they're looking for it to always be Stewie? Is it that they're, or Sab for that matter, when maybe they should be looking to JJ? Is it that, I don't know, but I just think that we need to get to a point where it's a handful of players that say, I'm taking this game over.
Yeah.
This is not a New York Liberty squad that I don't know if they think that they need that or that they don't need it, I guess I should say. But for me, that is what a lot of people expect an elite team from an elite team, and especially elite players on an elite team.
Yeah.
And I go back and forth on how much do the New York Liberty need it? Sometimes I think they absolutely need it. And you can just see like maybe the overthinking or like, are you going to take the shot? Am I going to take the shot? But then other times that team first mentality, which is also some of the quotes that have been attributed to how the team thinks of Leo.
Mhm.
There are other times where that team first mentality is the exact thing that saves them. So I go back and forth, Brian. I don't know.
Yeah, it's so hard to really, I think, especially when you're at the top and like really in that rarefied air with certain teams, it's tough because it's like, do you want to have a moment when this player is like the sun and we're just revolving around her? Like, so like just an example, like game 2 between Liberty Aces, it was okay. Asia, like I am the unanimous MVP. I'm not going out like that. Jump on my back. We head down to the finish line. Like
Right.
it's something like that. Like we saw Stu do that in game 3, where she's like, "We're not effing losing this game."
Yep.
And then there are other times when it's like, you're forcing it and you're driving into traffic.
Exactly.
You're making these mistakes. Like, oh, you have a player on your strong side wide open in the corner. Why are you taking a heavily contested jumper over 3 people? Like, do not take over when it's 3 people staring at you with their arms up like that, ready to block your shot. So it's such a delicate dance. And
it really is.
Yeah, and it's part of like the fun of like the human aspect of basketball, where it's like,
Yeah.
damn, like, oh, you made the over 3 people, God damn, you on fire. And then other times when it misses, like, why would you do that? No, don't do that.
Yeah, like
Do
what are we
something else.
doing? Yeah, what are we doing? And maybe that's just the growing pains. That's the what did Satou say? I loved how she said it. I'm gonna have to pull that quote, but effectively she was saying that's the joy and the pain. I think that's
Yeah.
something she said. That's the joy and the pain of sports, right? Is that very thing. And I think we're living that. We definitely live that out with this New York Liberty squad. But overall, I think this is a very well anchored team. I think individually, they're not a we get too high, get too low kind of team. They're very well anchored, very like they are where their feet are as individuals and thus as a team. So you know, I want to go to something. I think what Damien was saying is, what are our expectations for Leo in 2025? Let's end with that. And also, Brian, I would like you to comment. Is Leo a starter in 2025?
I think that they can put her back on the bench, but they shouldn't. Like, I think when the lineup worked as well as it did starting in game 1 against Atlanta, it's why go against the thing that won you the championship? Like, if there's no reason to do so, you don't do it. Like, you don't, you don't change it back because of insert reason here. You just go with what you go with what won you the championship. And I think that goes with Leo starting, because I think especially. I'm just thinking broadly, just a little bit ahead of like about how basketball has continued to evolve, especially in the WNBA. Like, you know, you need length, like you need that versatility, you need that switchability, like you need that. And Leo gives you that in spades. And I think having her starting out the game really allows Sav to be on the ball a little bit more. Like, she's a good decision maker, and even if her shot's not there, like she could find you, get you great shots. So she could do that. And I think having a wing who can do everything like Leo does, can lock in, along with a really stout perimeter defender in Benaja, Stewie flying all over, JJ can switch out, anchor the paint, do these things. Like, it really allows you to sort of like maximize what you're doing. And I think it's a situation where you want to do that. Like, you want to start off strong, like you want to really have that in, and then as you navigate the second unit, you can sort of like mix and match and go accordingly from there. But I think just as far as like starting off and establishing your foundation, Leia was absolutely essential to that. And I think the coaching staff will see that. And I think that having her start games is gonna help out a lot and really sort of give that comfort, give more room to work with. Like, defenders can't sort of like ease in to crowd you a little bit more because they're playing off a non-shooter on the court, things like that. So there are opportunities for Leo to really sort of like really tap into her game. Like, I'd love to see her
do a little bit more ball handling, but that's just with the experience of being with the team a second season, you really get to really explore even more of yourself in your game once you're in that second season. But I think just to like, is she starting? Yes, absolutely has to.
Yeah, that's so interesting. I feel like I have no issues with her starting. I think I'd prefer that over having her come off of the bench. You know, that being said, my gut is telling me that I almost want it to be a little bit of a hybrid and to be a little more situational. That's just based on who we think we know is coming back. Again, I think the Courtney Vandersloot deep dive, but more specifically, what Courtney Vandersloot actually decides to do for next season is going to be so critical for establishing what is going to be the foundation for 2025 for the New York Liberty. But we'll talk about her on our next episode. For me, I like the idea of having Leo play a little bit of that Swiss Army knife, like the true Swiss Army. So take a little bit of that responsibility off Stewie, take a little bit of that responsibility off Benijah, and give that to Leo. Now, I think that means in certain situations, and given who's healthy, who needs rest, whatever the case is, that means that she is a starter. I think that also means that sometimes she comes off the bench. Think of Diarca Hamby when she was with the Aces. There were times where the Aces needed her in the starting lineup. There were other times where it was clear as day they needed her coming off of the bench. Now, I think Leo, she's a rookie or coming off her rookie year, but she's also been in basketball. So I guess it depends also on the conversations that Leo is willing to have and what she sees as her growth potential for the New York Liberty, because that might not be something that she wants. But I could see a world in where we play a little bit of both sides, which I think would be extremely powerful. I like what you said, though, about having Sab on the ball a little bit more. 2 years ago, when we were starting the show, I'd have been like, heck no, she's a shooting guard. We need her to shoot. But as we deploy different weapons, so to speak, now in more dynamic, maybe players, Sab can play that one position. We've seen it in this past season. I think she's a lot more confident there. She's a lot more comfortable with her teammates. And I think Sabrina also bringing the ball up is something that, again, 2 years ago, I was like, I don't want to see it. Hell no, get me a veteran, bring the veteran on to do that. I still think I would love us to have another true point guard. I know a lot of people already in the mock drafts. This is exactly who they're thinking. Tahina Pau coming. Either way, what I would love to see is whomever we draft as a point guard to work under Courtney Vandersloot for at least one season. So I'm advocating for Courtney Vandersloot to come back. I don't know if that's what's going to happen. I feel like we're leaning more towards that than against that, but I don't think it's like a 90-10% split. I think it's probably closer to 50-50. Not exactly 50-50, but probably closer.
Yeah, it's very much a toss-up, and I feel like when we get into the Sloot section in particular, we'll really sort of like delve into the nitty-gritty of what Courtney's 2024 was. And I think just within that, I think there is a value in having, because like there were, just to do like a little early sneak peek of the Sloot episode, there were plenty of moments where Courtney came in when the Liberty World discombobulated and I'm serious, and she got them back together.
Absolutely.
Game 3 in Minnesota is a great example, because like they looked like crap to start that game, and then Courtney and Yara come in, and it's like, oh, we're actually back doing what we're supposed to do. Look at that.
Critical minutes. She played critical minutes for the New York Liberty.
Yeah.
Period.
Yeah, and I think having having a steady hand like Courtney, someone who's like really like, she doesn't have like, she's not like jump to the gym athletic, but she's very, very like, she knows how to get to her spots. Like she's always driving to the basket. He's always finding those driving lanes, and it's like, wait, how did Courtney see that lane, and how does she get to the basket to finish like that?
That's why I'm excited for her in Unrivaled. Like I think she can cut up some 3x3, like for real.
I'm excited. Yeah, I'm excited to see what Sloot is cooking when we start. We are officially, today is I'm bad at days now. Today's Wednesday, right?
Today is Wednesday. Today's Wednesday.
Yeah. All right. So we are a week away from the maiden voyage of Unrivaled, and Erica, head Black Rosie in charge, will be on the scene in
That's it.
Miami, Florida, or
That's it.
whatever is what. Okay, South Beach is what they call it, right?
Close Miami adjacent for sure.
Yeah,
Inland from the coast. Yes,
it's gonna be hot. I know that it's gonna be hot out there.
I'm excited. I've spent the last handful of hockey seasons in Florida. So it's a beautiful time of year to be in Florida. So I'm super excited for that. I cannot wait. We did hear from Courtney Vandersloot and a few other players from Unrivaled. We have media availabilities tomorrow, Thursday. So we will be covering all of that. But yes, boots on the ground, Black Rosie Media will be there. Listen, Courtney Vandersloot should retire and maybe draft a point guard like Tahina Paopao.
You tell her to retire. I'm not going to do that.
I'm not doing it. Listen, y'all are ready to send her off. I'm not ready to do that. If that's what she wants to do, I support it. Courtney Vandersloot still has value. Just like Brian said, I've said it before as well. We're going to talk about it on our next episode. Courtney Vandersloot still has value. It's a matter of now rejiggering the puzzle pieces. I think that's what it is. Having those conversations with Courtney, having those conversations with Leo, because again, I think Leo eats up. I would like her to eat up some Stewie minutes, some Benijah minutes, and then I think she'll probably end up eating some Courtney Vandersloot minutes. We already saw that, so that makes a lot of sense. I don't think you have to get rid of Courtney Vandersloot for this team to be able to get back to another finals. In fact, if you don't have another point guard that is ready to play in the WNBA finals, and not every rookie, most of them, I would argue, are not going to be ready to play in the WNBA finals, why would you let go of Courtney Vandersloot? Why would you do that?
Yeah,
Ionescu's still very much learning that one position. Let her learn alongside Courtney. Let a true one learn alongside Courtney. I'll say it till I'm purple in the face.
Yeah, it's tough to tell a kid, hey, you're playing 35 minutes tonight in the finals. Oh, I'm not used to playing this heavy workload. Well, you are now. Like, it's really tough to do. So I think, so having a steady hand matters a lot, and especially considering that I think the goal for the regular season is like you want to nurse everyone to the finish line to a certain degree, because the season's going to be longer, more travel now that the league is in San Francisco. So there's going to be more steps that they're going to have to take. So you really want to make sure that you manage everyone accordingly and not put too much strain on one individual player. And that comes within, hey, okay, some nights I'm going to need you to play 31. Other nights I'll keep it like a 25, 26. Like, you really have to be able to manage that well. And I think having a vet like Sloot who can play those nights with big minutes, like in the regular, like she had games in the regular season where she was essential down the stretch. And there are other nights, like, game 5 of the finals, where it's okay, this is the 5 that we're going with. You guys, like, when they're on the bench, help them out. Like, guide them through, use that insight. Everyone who's
Zach played that too. Sabrina Ionescu was not on the court for the last seconds of game 5.
Yep, she was an offense defense sub, and at Sab, right now, like, I need this in the lineup. You can't bring that. It's no knock on you, but when you're on the bench, help them out. And they did, she did.
And that's exactly what they did. And Sabrina, it was still as happy as a clam to get that championship. Also, now we know, hindsight, that she had an injury that required surgery that she's coming off of. But anyway, bygones. All right. As we close up, Damien saying, what changes are needed to help the Liberty repeat in 2025? I think we talked about this briefly, Brian, on the last maybe few episodes. I'm not ready to say exactly what we need. I would like to see a point guard, very specifically, a lead guard, whatever you want to call it, a one taken in the draft at some point, especially a one that we think can eventually eat up some or play some significant minutes in the WNBA. That's something that I would like to see. I don't think that's a need for 2025, but I think it's future proofing. And I think the Liberty can and should do that in 2025.
Yeah.
I think, honestly, the Liberty need to continue to experiment and really work and challenge. And by challenge, I mean give minutes to their bench players. They need to continue to tap into the depth. It was almost all focused on the starting 5 last year. and we saw how far they got. They tapped into their depth a little bit more this season. And I think arguably, I'd have to look at the numbers, but the New York Liberty is probably one of the teams that utilize their depth the most in the last WNBA season. But depth of maybe 2-3 players versus, you know, another 3-4-5 players is totally different. And I do think there's a world in which the New York Liberty, Brian, can tap even more fully into the players that they have on quote unquote reserve.
Yeah, I think within that, like as he mentioned, the relying on 2-3 players and then 3-4-5. I'm thinking back to a conversation I heard Olaf Lang have in 2023 with Jackie. He was making the point that, you know, when you look at the championship teams, they rely on only 2 players off the bench. And I'm like, you're right. I know you're right, but can you go against the grain a little bit in that regard?
Right.
Like, can you do it? And we saw they were able to rely on in game 5 2 players off the two, Leia, Niara, and Katie off the bench. Yeah, like that's your 2. Can you in 2025 and beyond? Can you be like, okay, here's bench player number 3, Kennedy Burke, for example, and then bench player number 4, Beck Gardner or Sloot, whatever. Like, can you tap into that a little bit more so you build out that rotation so you can manage everyone's minutes and keep them low and spread it out as much as you can while still maintaining that dominance? It's a roster question, and it's almost a philosophical question at the same time.
Yes. Yeah.
Because, you know, certain coaches, I'm like, I only need like 7, 8 through 12. I don't care, like big deal. And other coaches are like, I want to get everyone out there. So it's a philosophical question. And I think that's where the synergy between Sandy, Coach Renika, Zach O'Brien, Olaf, and Jonathan Kolb in the front office, that's where them being hand in glove is so valuable, because you're not, if you're a GM, you're not going to want to go against what the team and the coaching staff prioritizes and thinks is most effective for this team. So everyone's locked in and focused on getting the best out of making the most out of the resources, bringing the players that best fit the vision, and really expand what you're doing in 2023, 2024, and see if you can add on to it a little bit more as well too. So I think as we get into the season, like we still got plenty of time. I think the free agency window opens the 21st. Yeah, opens up the 21st. So we've got a couple weeks to sort of like figure out how the land is going to shape out. You know, the early arrival might be like a little bit of a tell as to, oh, here's where this player might be leaning, maybe not, but it's something to keep in mind. So I think as we draw closer and closer into the conversation period, and then the free agency sort of like head rush on the 1st, it's a matter of what can we do and what can we sort of like think about when it comes to the players that we know are going to be here. And then if it's a situation where players are maybe wanting to return to the United States market after being away for some time, how do we figure that out, and what can we do when it comes to that? So we've got time, and we've got a really smart front office who's diligent and sweats the details to a tremendous degree. So it's definitely going to be like a little fun back and forth.
Yeah, I agree. And as we were kind of wrapping up this Leo episode, in case we haven't said it enough, Leo, a complete game changer for this New York Liberty squad, to the point where we both think that she probably has a role and probably should have a role in the starting lineup for the New York Liberty next year. As far as her upside, I think if Leo is tapping into her full beast mode, Mamba mentality, whatever you want to call it, her German energy, if she gets that level of comfort earlier in the season, like that's just going to be huge. If we get the Leo that showed up for game 1 against Atlanta early in the season, forget about it. Forget about it. Like, come on, wrap it up, B. You talk so much, Brian, on the show about really aiming for that number 1 seed, Leo can help drive this team there in a big way. That's I don't really think it's a bold prediction. I think it's just watching the trend.
Yeah.
I think she seems to, take care of her body. She had a little bit of a hiccup in the Olympics, but was able to bounce back. She's strong. She's got moxie, as I like to say. She don't like getting punked in these streets. She says it how it is. And I think, honestly, that's what I probably undersold about Leo the most. We talk about it. This is a very team first, sum of all the parts, no I in team kind of Liberty team. And I think that's great. It seems to work for them. It works for the personalities for the most part. But we've heard Sabrina talk about it. We've heard John Quell talk about it. There were times in 2023 where if there was something maybe that someone felt was maybe unpleasant or might be taken the wrong way, that could be hurtful, not intentionally, but it maybe was a sensitive or touchy subject for someone, that it wasn't said. They had to let go of that in 2024, and it was hard work. They put in that work. Leo, she don't need all that work to get to the point. She don't need it. She's like, y'all can have the book club, sports psychology, cool, tight. I'm gonna keep it real.
Yep.
She got a little that Sky Diggs in hers. She got a little Sky in there, in the best way. So I love that, and I think. We said this about Niara, but I think it rings true for Leo. As her leadership evolves, that almost seems like the priceless commodity that she can bring to this New York Liberty squad. And if she really taps into that, while also tapping into, again, that kind of beast mode that she has, the Liberty are going to be hard pressed to not keep her. The only thing, as we wrap up, and I feel bad that we're ending on this because it is not Leo related, although I think it's not directly about Leo, but I do think it's Leo related. Do you see a world in which the New York Liberty can have Marine Johannes and Leonie Fiebich on the same team?
That's a good question. I would say it's possible because I think, my brain's trying to jump ahead to the salary cap ramifications of it, because I think MJ 1922. So this would be year 4 for her. So I think she'd be due for like a little bump above what the league minimum is. I think Leo's still going to be in the league minimum. Stewie tends to take haircuts for the team because, hey, you guys are good. I can take a little bit less. Y'all figure it out, kind of thing. So there might be flexibility there. There's definitely going to be a spot open now that KT is in Golden State. And then I wonder what that means for the rest of the roster, because they can subtract 1, 11 plus that makes 12. And then, it will take a lot of like figuring out and maneuvering. So it's not impossible, I'd say, but depending on if she's coming back into the States, I think we'll have something about her in the newsletter coming up. So it's a situation where if she comes back to the States, she wants to come back. Like, is she coming back here to begin with? That's the first question, and then the party goes from there.
Yeah, exactly. I think I'm with you. It's possible. It's going to take a little finagling. And then it goes back to the question that Damien is effectively asking, what does this team need? And does Marine Johannes offer that? I'm not sure. I'm not sure. It's an interesting question. I mean, I would love to see Marine Johannes back, just as for the entertainment value. I think her game also continues to rise. She was so exciting at the Olympics as well. And for MJ to come back, I think she has to really lean into her defensive game.
Yeah.
That would be for me, because you're not going to get length in a way from her, I think you get spacing obviously with her. So that's a value added, but you don't get the toughness that you get. You definitely don't get the toughness that you get from KT. Like that's not happening. Leo has that kind of mentality as well. I think I think you could go with another guard there, but then does bringing MJ back mean that the New York Liberty are not leaning into what I have said I really want them to do, is to have a young point guard that can learn under Courtney Vandersloot. So yeah, not dreaming, Vanessa Williams. Listen, let me live, okay? Dang, these are hypotheticals for a reason. Let me live. I didn't say it was gonna happen. I'm just asking. Dang, Aloysius, don't come for me. But you mentioned the newsletter a few times. Brian did a great job curating another newsletter. That's on me. I've had some technical issues and a little bit of delays, so I will get that up for you. But Brian, as always, is crushing it. And make sure you subscribe. Also, did you know that because our newsletter is driven by Beehive, that there's actually a way that you can get women's basketball roundup and our gold medal dispatch directly on your phone as an app. I love this. So, the newsletter, the whole vibe with the newsletter is that we send everything directly to your email, but also look at those little icons I got there, Black Rosie and the women's basketball roundup. That way, when we have our new digest, it will come up right on your phone. So make sure you check that out for subscribers. But to subscribe is free, but then you can get all of the updates right to your phone. You don't even have to worry about opening your email. So make sure you check that out. And we have some other things that we're cooking here over at Black Rosie Media. We do know that we're going to do our next deep dive over on Tempestagi Talk on the one and only Ezi Magbegor. We're just going to stick with the Olympians for the next handful. She's had a fascinating Olympics. Can't wait to talk about it. And where does she fit? Especially given that there seemed to be a little bit of a leadership tiff, if we will, with personalities. So where the New York Liberties sometimes are a little too nice, which is hilarious because they're in New York, and the Seattle Storm are maybe a little bit too strong-headed, which is hilarious because they're in the Emerald City. It's almost like the two coasts swapped. So I'm very curious to see where Ezi lands, but I will be talking with Roberta Rodriguez from Tempestagi Talk, our co-host there, but also the founder of Beta Basket. So we'll see. Damien, you get it. It would be great. Of course, it would be great to have them play together. I mean, the magician and does Leo have a nickname? We need one.
No, I don't think so. No, like they use the lion
ox.
emoji, but like as far as like an actual nickname, I can't think of one off the top of my head.
The magician and the ox. The magician and the German. Like we're gonna workshop it.
Yeah,
we're gonna workshop it.
I
would love to see it. It's not impossible. It may be improbable.
Mm-hmm.
But again, that's why you want to tune in to the next episode of Gotta Get Up, a podcast for New York Liberty fans. Because if you thought we had a lot of hypotheticals in this one, baby, just wait till we dive down the rabbit hole of all things shoulda, coulda, woulda, or will she, won't she, when it comes to Courtney Vandersloot. Brian, before we head out of here, let folks know you have anything that you're working on coming down the pike.
Oh, I'm trying to think off the top of my head. I might have an old story. Yeah, I might have something old. I gotta take care of. Like I'm so behind on so many projects, but like it's the new year. I'm like, let me just start from zero. But as my brain figures that out, I will be doing the newsletter every week. We got you covered. So that's gonna be my big project for the year. It's going great so far. We've got a lot of fun things in store. We keeping at it.
That's it. So make sure you subscribe. Again, it's free. And also we'll have a video up shortly on how you can get the app directly to your phone. As for me and Black Rosie Media, Brian said it, we're going to be heading down to Miami-ish, Florida, to cover Unrivaled. And so, of course, we'll be talking to Stewie. Of course, we're going to be talking to Courtney Vandersloot. Of course, we're going to be talking to Sabrina Ionescu and so many other players along the way. Also, in 2025, we are going to be flexing. Like some of y'all have probably figured this out. I travel a lot, but we want to be also a place where you can get information for when you are traveling. So if you're like me and you will travel for sports, then you're going to want to stay tuned for what Black Rosie Media has cooking up. We're working with a few sports commissions. We want to get you ready for big W events and other events on the sporting calendar. So that's something. And Aloysius is always ready, always on time, because you already know what time it is. Good night to y'all. And it's time to wave. Wave. Happy New Year. Happy Wednesday. Have a great week. And we'll catch you on the next episode. Peace out, everybody. Woo-hoo.